The child in the portrait, high on the misty hills of Devonshire, stood Wycombe House, a once grand estate that had long since surrendered to time. The stone walls were cracked with ivy, the wooden floors warped by years of damp and neglect. The air inside was still heavy with dust and memory. Most of the furniture had been removed or covered in white sheets, and silence blanketed the halls like a forgotten prayer. But in the great room, above the cold, soot-streaked fireplace, one item remained untouched: a portrait of a young boy. He was dressed in deep blue velvet with a white-laced collar. His cheeks were pale, lips unsmiling, and his grey eyes too vivid, too lifelike. His gaze didn't just look out, it followed. Anyone who stood too long before the painting swore. They felt the eyes move ever so slightly, as if acknowledging their presence. The boy's name was Nathaniel Wycombe, the youngest son of the family. The painting was completed in the fall of 1822, commissioned to mark his 10th birthday. Hours after the final brushstroke dried, Nathaniel was dead. He had wandered to the pond at the rear of the estate, chasing a toy boat, it was said, and drowned under unclear circumstances. The Wycombe family was never quite the same. His parents reportedly sealed the room with a painting inside and left the estate shortly after. Nathaniel's name was never spoken again. Years passed. The estate changed hands, then was abandoned altogether. Yet stories continued to circulate about the portrait and the room in which it hung. Local children dared each other to peer through the broken windows. At night, groundskeepers hired to maintain the outer gardens refused to enter the house. Those who did told of strange happenings: cold spots near the fireplace, soft crying late at night, the scent of pond water and lilies drifting through sealed windows. Most unsettling of all were the dreams. Visitors often reported dreaming of a fog-covered forest, calling out to a child who never answered. In 1987, a young historian named Emily Archer set out to research the property for a book on emotional residue in abandoned structures. She was logical, methodical, not a believer in ghosts, but intrigued by the recurring folklore surrounding the house. With permission from the Historical Society, she entered the mansion, recorder and camera in hand. Poor. For the first 2 days, nothing happened. She catalogued mouldy furniture, collected fragments of letters from the drawing room, took hundreds of photographs. But it was on the 3rd night, when she entered the room with the portrait, that something changed. The moment she stepped into the space, she felt a pressure, not oppressive, but thick, like walking into someone's memory. The portrait seemed clearer in person. Nathaniel's eyes, they weren't just painted. Were waiting. Out of curiosity, she spoke aloud. "Hello, Nathaniel. I've heard your story." No answer, but the air shifted. That night, she left a small notebook on the table below the painting. When she returned in the morning, the pages had been turned, all of them flipped with gentle human care. A few nights later, she deliberately misplaced a book on the shelf. When she came back, it had been Alf, and then came the diary. while inspecting the wall behind the portrait. She discovered a loose wooden panel. Inside, wrapped in faded cloth, was a child's leather journal. Nathaniel's name was written inside the cover. Most entries were short, daily notes about games, lessons, and books. But the final page was unsettling. Just 5 words. I'm not afraid anymore. Emily stayed longer than she'd planned. She began speaking regularly to the empty room, not out of fear or obligation, but because she felt she was being heard. On her final night, she left a letter on the mantel. "Thank you for trusting me. Your story will be told." When she returned in the morning, the letter was gone. In its place was a small, framed sketch. A child in the garden, smiling faintly. On the back of the frame, written in perfect script, "Thank you for remembering." Emily published her book a year later, but she never revealed the exact location of Wycombe House. She wrote only, "Some spirits remain, not for vengeance, put for love, not to haunt, but to be remembered." And somewhere on a lonely hillside, beneath layers of moss and fog, Nathaniel still watches from his frame, not waiting to be freed, but grateful he was never forgotten.